Hey guys, welcome back in. This is Module 4 of the Fast Track Training Series. I'm your host, Tim Knox. In this module, we are finally going to get to the point where you are going to dip your toe into the real estate pool. And I use that verbiage because it's better to dip your toe in the water before you dive in rather than diving in head first, not knowing what's at the bottom. And that old cliche really applies to real estate. You need to not only know the business itself, but you also need to know the folks that you're going to be dealing with on a daily basis. And so the next two modules, this one and module number 5, we're going to be talking about the people that you are going to be dealing with primarily as a real estate agent, and that would be buyers and sellers. So we're going to start with buyers in this module. Now, keep in mind, when you're a realtor, buyers and sellers could be a variety of folks because you have a variety of clients. For example, sellers may be someone who wants you to sell their single-family home. It could be someone that has commercial property you might want to sell. It could be multifamily apartments, could be land, could be any number of types of real estate that you're going to represent on the listing side, the selling side. Same holds true on the buy side. Your buyer might be someone who is looking to buy a single family home to move in, could be someone looking to buy a home to flip or to renovate for rental, could be someone looking for, again, multifamily apartments, commercial. So you're going to work with a variety of buyers and sellers, but primarily most real estate agents spend the majority of their career dealing with simple buyers, simple sellers, those who have a home to list and those who are looking for a home to buy. So the better you know your client, the better job you'll be able to do for them, and things will just go a lot easier on you. So we're going to start today talking about buyers, those folks who are enlisting your services to help them buy a home. This could be, again, could be a family, could be a single person, could be someone downsizing, could be someone upsizing, could be someone relocating to the area. And again, the point is, the more you know about your buyer, the easier it will be for you to do a great job for them. So we use what's called the buyer's checklist, and copy of that right here. You can also download this. There should be a link here somewhere below where you can download the buyer's checklist. The buyer's checklist is somewhat lengthy because you're going to basically ask them questions not only about their budget and the home they're looking for, but in an effort to get to know them, you're going to talk about where they live now, what they like, what they dislike, who is moving with them, what the household is going to look like. The buyer's checklist is really just a survey, and I use it that way. When I was working with buyers, I would make it a fun thing. I would just sit down with them and I would simply say, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, to help me get to know you better and to serve you better, I'd like to just ask you some questions. It could be fun. They're conversation starters. It's been my experience when you start asking, especially a couple, these questions, you want to plan on being there a little while because they actually enjoy the process. They learn a lot about each other, and as a result, you learn a lot about them. So there are a few questions, whether you use the in-depth buyer checklist or not, there are questions you must know about your buyer. The very first thing is when someone contacts you and asks you to represent them as a buyer, or you are prospecting and you find a buyer client, the very first question you want to ask is, are they currently working with another real estate agent? And you are trusting them to tell you the truth, because I have to be honest with you, some folks are not honest. They may tell you that they are working with another agent. They may tell you that they are not, and you find out that they are. But it's an important question that you have to ask, because you certainly don't want to step on anyone's toes. If there is another agent who has been working with these folks for a while, they deserve the deal. Okay, so always ask, are you working with another agent? If they say yes, simply ask, well, what's that agent's name? And if they tell you, you need to just say, well, look, you're already working with that other agent. I don't want to step on anyone's toes. I recommend that you continue working with them. Now, if they say, well, we really want to work with you, well, you will have to ask, well, do you have an exclusive buyer's agreement with this agent? Have you signed a form saying that she or he is your agent of record. If they have, I encourage you to encourage them to continue working with that realtor. But if they want to work with you, you have to tell them, look, I cannot work with you as long as you have that signed agreement with the other agent. If you would like to go back and talk to that agent, and again, up to you, I'm not encouraging it, but if you do want to get away from working with that agent, you need to let them know. You need to have either by text or email, I recommend something documented, something saying that you no longer work with that agent. Once you do that, then I can work with you. Otherwise, you may get into a situation where they have been working with another agent and they didn't bother telling you, or they lied to you. You end up doing a deal and you get a call one day from an agent that says, hey, I've been working with those people for months. That commission is mine. It's a battle you don't want. Trust me, it's easier to go find someone else to work with than to step on those kind of toes. So the first question is, are you working with an agent? If they say no, the next question is, are you willing to sign an exclusive buyer's agreement with me? And here's why I need you to sign that, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, because I'm going to be putting in a lot of my time, a lot of my effort, a lot of my gas, looking for a home for you to buy, and I need to be assured that I am your advocate. And if they agree to sign the exclusive buyer's agency agreement, great, have them do so and get on with the relationship. If they say no, I would consider that a red flag. If they are not willing to commit to you as their agent of record, odds are they're probably working with someone else, or they want the freedom to work with someone else. So that's going to be your call whether or not you continue working with that client. Now let me say this, if you're working with investors, investors never sign exclusive agency agreements. Investors work with a number of agents, so that is probably not going to happen, at least until you prove yourself to that agent that you should be their sole agent of record. But if the client does agree to sign your exclusive buyer's agreement, great. The next question you need to ask is this: are you pre-qualified? I will not work with a buyer, or at least I won't show them a home until I know they have a pre-qualification letter telling them and me how much home they are qualified for. Because if they don't have that pre-qualification letter, you are wasting time showing them homes that they may not be able to afford. So I always insist that they get that pre-qualification letter. It's an easy process. It's just a phone call with a lender. Get that letter because it does a couple of things. It shows that they are serious buyers, and number two, they can't afford to buy a home. All right. One side note here, just because they are pre-qualified for a certain amount does not mean they can afford those monthly payments. So that is another question to ask. Are you pre-qualified? If they say yes, how much are you pre-qualified for? What's the monthly payments on that going to be? And can you afford those monthly payments? Because it's really easy to get pre-qualified for, let's say, a $300,000 mortgage, but it might not be possible, or it might be difficult for them to make those monthly payments. And the last thing that we want to have happen is someone take on a loan that they cannot afford. So I always ask that question: are you pre-qualified? How much are you pre-qualified for? And can you afford those monthly payments? So those are the first questions that you need to ask. Those are the real key points, because now you know they are willing to work exclusively with you. You know how much house they can afford, and now you can move on to the process where you begin their home search. And that's when I would use the buyer checklist, because I want to know exactly, or as much information as possible, about the kind of home that they want to buy. You know, there are things like size. You already know the price. What is the size home they're looking for? How many bedrooms? How many bathrooms? What area of town? What is important to them when it comes to the home? Is it the size? Do they want a nice kitchen, a nice bathroom? How about a big backyard? Is the school zone important? You really need to come up with a detailed list of what they need or expect or want to have before you start this home search. Now, the whole point of this is to save you time and energy and gas money. Because if you don't know their budget, if you don't know their requirements or their wants or their needs, you may be showing them a lot of houses that are not going to work. And that's another thing. Once we have the buyer's checklist complete and I know what this buyer is looking for and it's my job to go out and find it, I keep them pretty much on that path. You know, if one of my buyers calls me one day and says, hey, we want to look at this house here in Madison, it's $400,000. Well, if they're only pre-qualified for $300,000, that's $100,000 over their budget. We've got to have a conversation. All right. Can they pre-qualify for more? If they can't, do they have that extra $100,000 to bring to the table? Okay. You've got to be careful because a lot of buyers will waste your time looking at houses they just can't afford. And I'm a firm believer that time wasted is time you never get back. All right. So keep that in mind if you've got clients who are asking you to take a Saturday and show them a dozen houses that you know they can't afford or they're not going to like. That's another one. I get, you might get a client ask you, say, hey, how about this house over here that I saw online? Well, if you look at that house and it's the wrong location or the wrong square footage or the wrong whatever, you need to say, you know, that house really does not fit your parameters. It's probably a waste of time taking a look at it. Now, you also got to remember this. You have to be flexible because people change their mind. You know, when you're doing the buyer checklist, we really dive in deep into, you know, what they're looking for. We talk about their current home. What do they like about it? What do they dislike about it? What are their plans? I've had folks call me and want me to assist them in finding a new home, and they've got a home to sell. Well, I want to be the one to list that home. So you ask those questions. You also want to know about the household. How many kids are coming? Is there an elderly person coming? Are there pets? Because again, those sort of things can determine the home that they ultimately will end up buying. I like to know a little bit about the lifestyle of my clients. Are they outdoorsy? Do they like cooking out? Do they like a pool? Or are they mostly inside people? Do they need a big rec room or a movie room? Would they like a backyard pool, or is a neighborhood pool adequate? Or do they care about a pool at all? You might also talk to them about the exterior features. Do they like a ranch style? Do they like a Victorian? Do they like whatever other style that there may be? What do they like, brick? Do they prefer vinyl? Do they want a yard? Do they want to be concerned with yard work? All of these are questions that you will ask that will help you do your job better. You know, on the interior, would they like a basement? Would they like a two-story? A lot of, especially older folks, we don't want a two-story home. We don't want stairs. And of course, the square footage, bedrooms, bathrooms, all of that stuff is really important when you are asking the questions. And then you get to what I call the must-haves, the just wants, and the things that we need to take into account. Every client that I've ever dealt with has a list of must-haves. Okay, Mr. Client, Mrs. Client, what are the 5 things this house must have? Well, you know, in our area here, it must be in the Madison School District. Good luck, it's a unicorn. Or it must have a big kitchen, must have a nice bathroom, must have a family room, must have a big backyard, must be close to shopping. What are the must-haves? What are those things that in your mind you cannot live without? My next house must have this. Then I ask them, well, what are the just wants? What are those things? They're not must-haves, they're not deal breakers, but they're just wants. Well, you know, I'd like to have a big backyard. It's not a deal breaker, but I'd really like to have one. Or I just want a big kitchen. I just want to be close to shopping, whatever. Okay? The must-haves are those things we consider the must-have deal breakers. The just wants are those things, it's kind of like a wish list. It would be nice to have them, but I can live without them. And then there are other factors, or if there are other factors that should be taken into account on the buyer checklist, what might those be? Again, maybe they are bringing a mother-in-law to live, so they're going to want a mother-in-law suite. Maybe, again, they are outdoorsy people, so they want a pool. By completing the buyer checklist, You are going to know your clients really well, and you're going to know what they want, what they need, what their must-haves are, and you will have a much easier time working with them. All right, so keep in mind, the more you know about your buyers, the better. Now, that helps you not only find a home for them to live in, but it will also help you when it comes time to making an offer. It will help you when it comes time to negotiate points of the contract, and really what to do when the contract is accepted and get you on through to closing, okay? So, for example, let's say one of the things the buyer really wanted, they wanted a nice neighborhood pool. Well, if you get to the process where you've made the offer's been accepted, let's say we do an inspection and maybe there are some problems there that the buyer starts to have second thoughts. Because you know them so well, you can always say, you know, Bob, I know having that fence repaired is kind of a big deal to you, but think about this. Even if that fence isn't repaired, this house checks so many boxes on your list. This house has the neighborhood pool that you like. This house is in the school district, so perhaps we don't need to be as hard-edged on some things. Again, you're gaining or gathering this information because it's going to help you do your job better, find them a home, but also negotiate the waters as you go through all the way to closing, all right? So that is the buyer checklist. I recommend that you download it. I recommend that you print it out and use it on every buyer that you work with, because the more you know about buyers, the better off you will be. Now, let me say this about buyers, and I'm going to say the same thing about sellers when we talk over there. Do not let buyers bully you. Do not let them own your time. Do not let them boss you around. Do not let them take advantage of you, and certainly don't let them abuse you. There will be buyers who think that because you are their realtor, you're making a commission off them, you owe them. You have to do everything they say, and you have to take every bit of their BS with a smile. That is not true, okay? I have fired buyers before. If I have a buyer who is unreasonable or hard to work with or overly demanding of my time, I will part ways with them, and I will go find someone that I work with, that I can work with a little better, okay? I know when you're first starting out, you want every client that you can get, but buyers especially can be extremely demanding, especially when it comes to your time. They will send you a text at midnight wanting to see a house at 9 a.m. the next morning, and if you don't get the text until 9 a.m., well, they're not happy with you, all right? One thing that I would do is I would set some parameters quickly or early for my buyers. Look, Mr. and Ms. Buyers, I am going to do everything I can to find the perfect home for you. I'm going to go above and beyond. I'm going to spend a lot of time and energy doing it. However, I do have a family. I turn my phone off at 7 o'clock at night, and I turn it back on at 8 a.m. the next morning. So odds are there's not going to be anything that has to happen overnight. So those are my parameters, and I appreciate you respecting those. And likewise, Mr. and Ms. Buyer, I won't call you at midnight if something comes up. You need to also make sure they respect your time and the time you spend with others. All right, you might find buyers that will just call you out of the blue and say, hey, I just drove by this house. I really want to see it. Can we go see it now? And they expect you to drop everything. Again, if you get all of that out of the way up front, when you're doing the buyer checklist, you just tell them, look, here's how I work, and I'm very successful at this, so it works. I know it does. I have my hours. I have my certain times my phone will be off. I have certain times that I will be busy. I would be more than happy to be on call for you, but that does not mean that I can drop everything, because I too have a family just like you. I have found that if you are really upfront and open with people, they respect that. They will respect your time. They'll respect what you do. They will be less demanding, and they certainly will not be abusive. So just be upfront with folks. And again, don't be afraid to say no. If a buyer calls you up and says, hey, I want to see this house over here and it is out of their budget and out of their required parameters, I would simply say, guys, you're wasting your time and mine. There are pictures of that house online. You can go take a look at it. If you can't afford a $400,000 budget, get me another pre-qualification letter, and then we will talk about going to look at that house, okay? So the bottom line with buyers is set those parameters up front. They will respect you if you respect them. Use the buyer checklist, because the more you know about your buyer, the better off everyone will be. You will have a much easier time finding them the house of their dreams and getting the job done quickly for them, okay? So that's the buyer checklist. Again, you can download it, print it out, go buy it. The more you know about your buyers, the better off you will be, all right? So in the next module, we are going to have the same conversation about sellers, because sellers are a different animal. They think differently than buyers. They are programmed differently. Of course, they have a completely different goal. Sellers want to sell their home as quickly as possible for as much money as possible. Buyers want to buy that home as quickly as possible for the least amount of money. And when we get to the module talking about negotiation, we're going to talk about the mindset of the buyer and seller and how you need to adjust your negotiating tactics based on who you represent. So, all right, that's it. Next module, we will talk about working with sellers. Hopefully this was helpful to you. Download the checklist, read it, use it. I think it will make your job much easier. All right, that's it. I will see you in the next module.